I love to see people who are supporting independent journalism, which is what we're going to talk about today with these three wonderful human beings. So I thought I'd start with, I invariably have people tell me, mostly Democrats, you're not a journalist. And I'm like, you're right. I mean, I used to be a journalist, and now I do political commentary, and it's important to know that those are two very different things. So talk about, first, what you consider yourself to be. Victoria?
Oh, I would say that for the past 30 plus years, I've been a talk show host. So I use my journalistic skills that I've been using since the inception of my career to tell people what the facts are. And facts don't matter who's saying them, as long as they're facts. And I have an opinion about them. And so I tell people what my opinion is.
Johnathan, what are you?
Depends who you ask, depends on the day. But after 20 plus years of being a corporate journalist, first of all, I'm never going back, ever. So at this point, I'm a senior fellow at Discovery Institute. I don't even know what that means. I'm a guy who barely got out of college, so I'm not an academic, but I'm always a journalist at heart. So at this point, I'd say I'm sort of a hybrid now. I'm an independent journalist here to serve the community always. So that's where I'm at.
If you ask Dow Constantine, you are not a journalist.
That's right.
Yeah, and we always listen to what Dow Constantine has to say. Glenn, how about you?
I think I've always just defined myself as a conservative activist, and I think that part of that is exposing the truth and investigating what government is doing to us and behind the scenes that they don't want us to see. So inevitably, that just almost turns you into a journalist, whether that's your original objective or not. So sometimes I say that I'm an evangelist for freedom and liberty, because that's what I care about, and that's what I see being taken away, and that's why we have to tell the stories so that we can stop it.
Yeah. Applaud away. I got asked this question the other day, and I really had to sit and kind of think about it because I'd never been asked it before, and I want to ask it to you, Johnathan Choe, because I think it's also relevant. I mean, neither of us consider ourselves Republicans. Would you two consider yourself Republicans? Victoria?
Brandi, we just outed ourselves.
I'm a conservative. I'm a conservative.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm more libertarian than anything, but I got asked the other day, why do you think Republicans like your work so much if you're not a Republican? Johnathan, why do you think conservatives and Republicans have become such a fan of yours when you are not yourself a Republican?
Well, first of all, let me just say that I'm not from this area. I'm an outsider. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, if you don't know. I'm an East Coast kid, Red Sox fan, Patriots, Celtics. Sorry about that. The Pats are struggling this season. But anyway, I was a JFK Democratic liberal all these years. And what that simply meant back in the day was if you agreed to disagree, rather we would agree to disagree and find a solution for the common good. I moved to Seattle 3.5 years ago. This place is so far left and whacked out, I'm like, I might have to start voting for Trump. So, in other words, I'm an issues voter. And I think a lot of conservatives and Republicans, first of all, I will say, have become my friends. And I believe that you guys are on the right side of history. And because of that, I think my work resonates because my job every single day is to hold public officials accountable, who happen to be Democrat in this state, and I go after the truth, and I expose corruption. And there is a lot of corruption and a lot of truth-telling that needs to continue, and at the end of the day, my videos, the video don't lie. This is devastating video that I'm showing every single day. It is an indictment on the people in power.
Yeah. And I think what's so glorious about that, as you said, very video forward, and how can you take issue with that? You're seeing 3 minutes, 10 minutes of unedited video. If somebody has I love how they attack you for what your video shows. It's like, I just filmed it. I mean, why are you attacking me for it? It's just a
Seattle.
video. It's
what are you going to do?
But you mentioned something important, which I think is the fundamental job of any true journalist, which is to hold powerful people accountable. In this state, that happens to be Democrats, not to offend any Republicans, but if the media is spending more time holding Republicans accountable, I have to wonder where their priorities are. But in that sense, Glenn, you're a government watchdog through and through. From, over the years since you first started doing what you're doing, how have you seen the government watchdog mentality of the corporate media erode?
Well, it's been pretty substantial because years ago when I worked at the Freedom Foundation, I would frequently come across stories that maybe we didn't want to tell. And so I would collect the records requests and I would hand them over to traditional journalists, and then they would get a whole story out of it. And I wasn't asking for credit or looking for it. They would they would thoroughly do the story. And now what I find is when you uncover these stories, the journalists don't want to know. That's oftentimes what it is. Or they're going to purposely hide the truth about what the story actually is.
So wait a second. So you've been bringing, like you used to, vetted stories to journalists for them to vet themselves,
Right.
like on a silver platter, and they just
It doesn't fit
away.
the narrative. It doesn't fit the narrative that they want. And when, I'm doing a video tomorrow actually without going into names, but and I do name names in my video, so you'll have to watch it. But without giving it away too much right now, of a journalist that's well known here in the Seattle area who's just lying. We're giving him records, police documents, and instead of actually holding the elected officials accountable and questioning them about their lies, he wants to attack the activists or the volunteers who are actually digging up and exposing the truth.
And so you'll name names tomorrow.
And I'm going to play his video, and I'm going to show you how he's lying.
WeTheGovern.com. WeTheGovern.com.
Yeah.
Victoria, I'm curious, sometimes what I struggle with is, the people who most need to hear what we have to say or most need to see the videos Johnathan is showing are the ones who are least likely to be listening. And so as a conservative, as someone who gives your opinion on politics, how do we try to get people who disagree with us to start to listen to what we have to say?
Well, I try to be friendly and I try to find the humor in everything, and I think that's really the key. I like to do that when I fill in on KTTH on the radio because it appeals to more people. You're much more likable, and the first thing about running for office or being on the radio or anything else is being likable. If people don't like you, well, they're not going to watch it or listen to you. So I like to do that and I think looking at things backwards is always the way to do it, because that makes sure that you get the point across and you also come at it from a different point of view. For example, there are ways in which you could look at what's going on in the entire political milieu right now, and you could look at the this House Speaker stuff. And you can find a lot of humor there. That is really funny. But I also don't think it's the trauma that so many people think it is. This is an internecine warfare, but the best kind, in that you will find out where the winners are going to be and the values that the House Republicans will now have to stand behind in order to go forward. And so I find that's important. So likability, you're not going to get a surly Speaker of the House. Anyway, so I like to approach it that way, and also like the way Johnathan does the in-your-face kind of thing. But what he does is he goes to the very people who are making the decisions, and he shows them what is going on, and he asks them and challenges them to answer for it, and I like that very much. But I find that in my line of work, what I do in the kind of whether it be on PJ Media, whether it's on my podcast, the Adult Learning Podcast, thank you, and on KTTH, if you are more likable, you are going to get your point across. And Glen's really super likable. He's like, hey, and by the way, there are $800 million that they just wasted. Isn't that? He doesn't do quite like that, but it's kind of like, I loved your videos. I loved your videos before I knew you, and now I love you too, Glen. I love you. Such a valuable thing. And I would say that on the local level, the most difficult thing to do, especially in talk radio, that's really basically what I do, and it is doing local news. So hard to do local and make it meaningful.
Johnathan, why is there a place for people like you, people like us? We both came from the TV news environment, and now we're both making a living doing it on our own. What is wrong with corporate media that would allow us to make a living independently?
Just ask the audience, right? Who actually still watches television or gets a Seattle Times? Look, all the data and the metrics now shows most Americans now are getting their news from cell phones, from social media, and it's really democratized everything. And one of the biggest indictments on mainstream corporate media is we have jobs because they're not doing their job. It's really that simple. So the challenge that I'm facing right now at Discovery Institute is that we're trying to expand our program. And get this, worst kept secret, I can't find anyone to hire because there aren't enough journalists who want to do what I'm doing. Now, I'm not saying you need to go into a homeless encampment or run away from a guy chasing you with an axe or nunchucks or a knife, and I was just chased like the other day by a woman with a baton, but check out my video. You can't make this stuff up, but like people who are willing to do the work that's necessary, the investigative work, you're just not finding that right now. And that's why anyone, even in this audience, I'm on this big trip right now of citizen journalism. We all have cell phones, right? The other day I was at this King County Republican event and like 3 people came up to me and said, "You gotta come cover the school board meeting." I'm like, I ain't coming to no school board meeting. But if you get the video, I'll report on it. You guys, everyone in this crowd now must play a role. We are depending on you because we cannot depend on mainstream corporate media. They're compromised.
Yeah, and I think it's not just that, they're dwindling. So even back, 15, 20 years ago, there used to be like 20 State House reporters specifically dedicated to covering what was happening in the legislature. Now there's like, 2 or 3? One of them's part-time. So there's a lack of coverage of these issues. Glenn, we talked about why can we make a living doing this? But for Republicans, I think it's clear that the corporate media is biased against Republicans. I don't know that anybody could really deny that at this point. How important is it for Republicans to get a fair shake, to have this growing independent media environment?
And I don't know if I would define it even as Republicans. It's just this independent thought idea that Republicans would be, included in. And one of the things, I like to do whatever government fears the most, because that's usually a pretty good indication that you should do it, right? And one of the things that I have found recently, I've been working with activists around the state to do local newsletters or local websites or local reporting. Recently, just a couple weeks ago, there was a group that's been set up in Cowlitz County, for example. I'm just thinking of one example. And they've been doing these newsletters that they put out all the time. What's going on in the school board, what's going on in crime stats, just local reporting, pure local. And one of their supporters overheard the city manager in Longview talking to a county commissioner, and they were saying, whatever we do, our highest priority is to get rid of this newsletter.
Wow.
Because it's exposing the truth. That is what they fear. I have letters that were written by a guy, Emmett O'Connell, out of the Thurston County Auditor's Office to the Secretary of State trying to get my channel shadow banned or videos censored because they don't like the narrative. And one of the other problems with local news now is you look in Seattle, right, there's 8 public information officers that work there. There's, I think, 12 people that work in the Department of Ecology that are public information folk. There's actually more people in government right now disseminating information or trying to spread their narrative out there than there are journalists to actually censor it, or at least sift through it, because it's already been censored. There's an agenda and a message they want you to hear, and they all get on the same pages, and if you do the records requests on them, you'll see that they're all agreeing that this is the message we want, and that's what they want you to know, and it isn't the truth.
Well, and I do want to get into that because there's this question of access when you're independent media that I know that some of us have experienced firsthand changes a lot when you leave one of the mainstream stations. But do you guys want to comment on that? I don't approach my job every day saying, how can I make Republicans' lives easier? How can I get Republicans elected? But I think it's more so about taking the foot of mainstream media off the scales and giving Republicans a fair shake for their ideas. So Johnathan, what do you think? Why should people in the crowd care about, who are conservatives, who are Republicans, care about the work that you're doing?
I think at the end of the day, this is the key. I feel like this particular party in this state has lost its identity to a certain extent. And that's because this party has allowed mainstream corporate media to define them. And until you take back your story and rewrite your narrative. Because right now, the stereotype is what for Republicans? Old, white, racist, bigots, closed-minded. Should I keep going? I mean, who wants to add to that?
I forgot Nazis.
Nazis, fascists, whatever. But I'm like, wait a second. That's not the Republicans or conservatives that I know. The ones I know are on the right side of history, standing for parents' rights, standing for merit-based education, standing against the woke ideology. And I'm like, wait a second. Until this party decides to rewrite their narrative, you're going to keep on being pigeonholed and defined by somebody else. And that's why I keep saying having some type of media mechanism to tell the story, and it really does come down to, for this party, in my opinion, you guys telling your own story by understanding how to leverage social media, the iPhones, working with all of us up here. I think I'm speaking for us. I think it's fair to say we're all willing to help. But it's going to take, again, everyone in this room to do that.
I would say that not everybody's going to be able to pick up their iPhone and do that. But what you can do is you can support people doing this kind of journalism, and you can support them on their locals pages, their YouTube, Rumble accounts, and that sort of thing to keep the lights on, because it's really expensive to do this, especially when you're by yourself. And may I just add that I work for a website that I've always aspired to work for, PJ Media. It started out as Pajamas Media. They were the bloggers in the pajamas at first, and well, now we're a very amazing website with lots of writers and good thinkers there and wonderful pieces. But the fact of the matter is, and these guys can attest to this, Facebook and Google have throttled our accounts to the extent that revenue is down by 90%. 90%. So what we have to do as a website, what I have to do as a personal content creator, is I have to go out and get people to say, okay, I'll support you, Victoria, on the Adult in the Room podcast. I will support PJ Media, and when you do your West Coast to West Coast report every week, I will support that. When Glenn does a video, please support him. When the Choe Show, the man of the hour, is out there walking the streets of Seattle, please help the Discovery Institute, tip his personal account, whatever it is. You're not going to be able to do it all yourselves, and nobody's got the chutzpah that this guy has, but you can support him.
Or stupidity.
I feel like every conversation I've had with Johnathan Choe on the phone ends with, Johnathan, don't get chased by anything today. It's like,
Be careful,
don't get
Johnathan.
killed. And I've told him, if you get killed doing one of these things, I'm not coming to your funeral, because I absolutely warned you. We will end with how folks can support everyone. But how hard is it? You know, I think this is particularly true for Johnathan. I've detailed at length the lengths that the governor's office, the King County executive have gone to block your coverage. I mean, one time they physically stopped you from entering a press conference. So do you feel like for each of you, you can be effective in your job if you don't have the access that the mainstream media has? Glenn, why don't you start?
Well, I mean, I don't ever expect to have their access because I'm not their friends. And, you know, I believe in speaking truth to power and questioning authority. And so I believe that you go and they don't have any choice, right? They're going to have to hear from us in one way or another. The thing they'll always wonder about is, how did you get that information, right? You know? And so I think when they'll get paranoid, because they know I actively recruit whistleblowers in every state agency and every city and every place, because there's a lot of disgruntled people working government. And there's good people that work in government, or they're just disgruntled. I'll take either one. And if they have the information that you should know, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And I don't care about the access. Now, that's a little bit more of a rebellious approach to
Yes.
it, but I'm happy to be we are the rebellion.
Yeah.
We're not in power, so we're the rebellion.
Johnathan, I was getting the flashlight of death, so quick answer on that. Are you as effective without that access?
It's a lonely road, but somebody's got to do it. What Glenn was talking about in terms of the access journalism is so in play now, because the press offices have now outgunned the journalists. Because the veterans that you guys watched growing up, they're no longer there. They're leaving for double the money now at Amazon PR. They're going to work for the police department, they're working for the city, and God bless them for that. But the ones who are left are now like these young kids who you don't even recognize on TV anymore. And they're afraid. They tell me, Johnathan, we can't do what you're doing because we're gonna lose access. So that's what's happening. People are reporting, towing the line, and that's why I have to just pop up now secretly at these press conferences. Like, I'm not invited anymore to these press conferences. Can you believe that? Brandi, is that true?
It is, because he'll text me, did you get the press release for this? Can you send it to me?
Yeah, so I'm gonna be sneaking up on the mayor tomorrow, all right? So don't tell him that.
So let's end with this really quick. I'm not beyond begging, but we need your support to do our jobs. I mean, that's the bottom line. If you're a subscriber to the Undivided podcast, can you raise your hand? Okay. I need the rest of you to go after today to undividedpod.com and support our show for $5 a month, because that's how we continue to do this work full time. Glenn, how can this crowd support you?
Well, I'm a total charity case, and I have been for like 7 years. So somehow you can donate on my website at We the Governed. You can watch my videos and share them widely. And then I usually just beg when I have a tip jar sometimes. I just beg when I'm in public. So. But I am committed. That's obviously not in it for the money. It's a lifestyle. I mean, I've committed my whole life to this. So, but anything you can do helps, and sometimes it's not even just money. I drive cars into the ground, so if you know somebody who has a junker car out there that will blend into Seattle and it's a stick shift so they won't steal it, right? So there's all kinds of ways, but wethegovern.com, if you go there, that would help. Thank you.
He gets sued a lot. He needs the extra money. Johnathan.
Yeah, just quickly, if you don't mind, follow me on all my platforms. I think I'm shadow banned now, maybe on X. I've been permanently banned on TikTok, so I don't know what's going on there, but you can follow me at CHOESHOW, and like everyone up here, we're turning down money, I feel like. I've had opportunities to go elsewhere, but I just cannot go back to corporate media. So, yeah, anything helps. I sound like a homeless person now.
Anything helps.
Anything helps. Sorry, that's my beat. I can say that.
We need the Sarah McLachlan music behind us.
Anything helps.
That gets him in the arms of the angels.
At least she has a job.
Yes, Victoria?
VictoriaTaft.com is where everything lives, but YouTube really sucks right now, so please support that over there. The Adult in the Room podcast, Victoria Taft. Just thank you.
Love it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brandi.